Taking the Principle of Least Resistance. Xiafeng. August 16, 2005. Translated by Treasure and edited by Kayer. A watermelon that is picked violently will not be sweet, and a person acting under duress does not perform efficiently. Rowing a boat down a river is better than sailing up against the current, and buying a needle is better than grinding an iron rod into one. Enjoying hardships is better than struggling against them, so rather than forcing yourself to fight, you should just submit and relax. Cleaning the earth is better than terraforming Mars. Strengthening a nation is better than building the Great Wall. Dredging smoothly is better than preventing forcibly. Feeding a dog is better than training a pig to become one. And singing the praises of the living is better than flattering the dead. Use your head to create knowledge rather than to defend dogma. Using local materials makes more sense than importing them from across the ocean, but if none are available, it is better to move to another place. Obey nature and swim with the tide because everything changes, and do not store rotten apples. When the east is dark, the west will be bright. If it is dark in the south, there will be light in the north. People who were not raised here have obviously been raised over there. Change with the opportunity and take things as they come. Never complain about poverty when you are safe and well-fed. Never miss having meat when you have bread. Little birds that prefer to nest in the woods do not need to take to flying lessons from swans. One whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. An inflated desire will cause trouble, but a mind without material desire will remain calm. Ambition to fame may cause bitter revile. No diamond, no porcelain work. There is no need to force one to learn to play the piano if they were not born to love its music. It is vain to dream of singing beautifully without being able to carry even a simple tune. Never mind when you are reviled as bullshit. There is no need to be modest when you are praised as an expert or master. The flower blooms today, but protect its leaves or it will wilt tomorrow. It would be awful to miss the blooming season, for it will be lost when winter comes. You are loved and appreciated. That is a God-given opportunity. So why be cold and distant? The time to achieve your dream with God's blessing is when you are regarded as a sage or saint. So take advantage of the opportunity to realize a glorious life. Do not eat meat on the table, but chew the bones under it. Leave the awarded honor, but go through hardship. Being a crouching tiger with talent, but without carrying a load or playing a role, one will be a pile of broken bones to their death. Butterflies are pretty sights as they fly freely, but a buried gemstone is no better than the soil. People cannot stay pretty for 1,000 days and flowers cannot remain beautiful for 100. Although fine cellared wines exude beautiful fragrances, they are of no use until they are consumed. Drink as we have wine today and never plan for the following 1,000 years. Tsunamis and earthquakes might happen at any time, so who knows how long we will enjoy our lives. Value what you have. Anything that is easy to gain is actually a gift from the greatest creator. If there is a faucet in the house, why dig a well miles away? Treasure what is coming to you without rejection, but never waste your life daydreaming. If there are many hardships and troubles in that which you are engaged in, you must have misunderstood life. God punishes infatuated people and hell serves for flaunting people, so why not lead the easy life? Great events are determined by Tao, not by people who do not even understand themselves. The best life can be led by acting along Tao. Wasting a God-given opportunity is acting against Tao. Gangsters should be ruled by demons, but sages should be led by saints. Whether evil or a sage depends on Tao. Speak words to people. Talk ghostly when you meet ghosts. Keep silent when you meet monsters. Chirp and tweet with birds. Howl with wolves. Describe your aspirations when meet your soulmate. Eat when you hunger. Void when you must. But never complain to others if you made yourself starve or withheld waste. Buddha guides people with predestination and soulmates can be found in Life Genuine. It is sad to have layers between hearts. Melons are just melons while apricots must be apricots. Everything depends on the telepathy. If melons want to be apricots or apricots want to be melons, the program will be out of order and the goals cannot be realized. Taking the principle of the least resistance, life will be smooth.
麻将混沌与中华文化
Mahjong, holography and Chinese culture Shuifeng.
Septembre 2029-2007.
The root of Chinese culture is holography, or rather, the major vein of Chinese culture is holographic culture rather than Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. Holographic culture completely conforms to the Tao of the greatest creator. However, to be chaotic also means disorder. Thus it is difficult to accurately express the meaning of the way of the greatest creator, so I regard the root of Chinese culture as the holographic culture. Many Chinese intellectuals have written articles calling for the renaissance of Chinese culture. After reading their articles, I feel bewildered and ask them in writing, which part of the Chinese culture do you want to revitalize? Not one of them can give me a definite answer or explanation. This shows that those who want to revitalize Chinese culture only have a good wish but do not really understand what Chinese culture is. Chinese culture is actually holographic culture, and the renaissance of Chinese culture means the renaissance of holographic culture. The cultural primogenitor of the Chinese nation is Fuxishi, whose main contribution to culture is Hechiluo Book and the 8 Diagrams. Taiji, the 8 Diagrams, Book of Changes, Liujia, Jiuxing, and Feng Shui in traditional Chinese culture all are derived from him. Hechiluo Book is also the origin of the theory of main and collateral channels and acupuncture point in traditional Chinese medicine, and the origin of Book of Changes, Feng Shui, Yin and Yang, and the 5 elements, the 8 characters about one's birth, Ziwidishu, the selection of auspicious dates, divination, and necromancy. What Hechiluo Book expresses is a holographic phenomenon, Fuxishi's telepathy between man and heaven, and the scene of the universe resulting from the unity between man and heaven. The connotation of holographic phenomenon is the hologram of the universe. It's so expansive that nothing is excluded, and it can also be so small that nothing can be included. Every phenomenon and everything has a hologram telepathy with the universe. There is nothing independent of a thing and no phenomenon independent of a phenomenon. To put it more vividly, the fluttering of wings by a butterfly in Alaska of America can trigger a storm in the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. A coughing by an Eskimo in the Arctic region may induce the fall of an Australian from a building. When interpreting the thinking of mankind, I discover that the most profound thinking is holographic thinking, which is followed in order by non-form thinking, Taiji thinking, visualized thinking, elusive thinking, and the like. The Confucian thinking is the material thinking, the lowest level of thinking. Taoist thinking is Taiji thinking. Buddhist thinking is non-form thinking. The Western thinking based upon science and technology is image thinking and associative thinking. The currently prevailing thinking of the new era, for example, Seth's thinking, conversation with God, the law of one, the disappearance of the universe, A Course in Miracles, and so on, belongs to elusive thinking. The ultimate road that man will take is holographic thinking, or rather, mankind will inherit, carry on, and promote the holographic culture. We can get to know and understand the holographic culture from the 4 phenomena revelation, the 8 diagrams, Huzi, and Mahjong. Revelation means the observation of the astrological movement in the sky, the search of the law of the earth, and the study of animals and plants, the close examination of what is near and the speculation of what is far away. In one word, we can have a direct dialogue with the greatest creator. The revelation that I have written may serve as an introduction for others to come up with something more valuable. The 8 diagrams means that Wuji gives birth to Taiji, Taiji gives birth to Yin and Yang give birth to 4 signs, 4 signs give birth to 8 Gua, 8 Gua gives birth to 64 Yao images, 64 E images give birth to every phenomenon in the universe. Once the changes of 64 E images are understood, it will be easy to understand the dialectical relations between changeable and unchangeable, and understand the holographic principles. Huzi was the teacher of Lizi. Huzi could skillfully apply the holographic principles. By studying him, we can understand what holographic phenomenon means. Mahjong is a game popular among Chinese people. Do not disregard Mahjong because it is really what holographic principle is about. A regular set of Mahjong has 136 pieces, consisting of 4 east, 4 south, 4 west, 4 north, 4 center, 4 fa, 4 white, 36 tiao, 36 Bing, and 36 Wan. These pieces combine to form the astronomical numbers. Therefore, we can say that even if a person plays mahjong every day all his life, he may never encounter a combination that is identical to any other combination or array. You feel as if lost in a maze. You may know things as they are, but do not know why they are so. It seems that everything is a matter of accident. There is no order to anything. Every time you play mahjong, you hope for chance and luck, and are not sure whether you will win or lose. However, to be holographic is to be orderly. There are rules and laws to what is holographic. The rules and laws are meticulous and allow of no loopholes. What seems to be accidental and random is actually orderly and inevitable. People who play mahjong all attach great importance to luck. If they win, they say they have good hand chi, luck, and if they lose, they say they hand chi is not good. What is hand chi? Everyone can have a try. If you do not have adequate sleep, if you are not in a good condition, or if you have had sex within the 24 hours, you will not have good hand chi, and the possibility for you to lose will be much higher than the possibility for you to win, unless other three people are in an even worse situation. Meanwhile, the direction you are facing and the 5 elements of all the players all have influence on whether you will win or lose. Therefore, if you want to win at mahjong, you must maintain your vigor and good health and refrain from sex during the short period. If so, you are likely to enjoy good hand chi. Now the problem is, the combinations of astronomical numbers, which seem like a series of random occurrences, are actually closely in line with the hand chi of mahjong players. If you do not have a good hand chi, you will lose the game no matter how well you can play it. This is where the holographic principles are working. Now let's take a look at these phenomena in the society. Many rich people and people who are good at making money actually have not received much education and do not work very hard, but they are very rich and can make much money. Many people in the officialdom do not have very high intelligence and are not so kind-hearted, but they have many opportunities and are promoted smoothly. On the other hand, many well-educated, intelligent, kind-hearted, and hard-working people are poor and cannot in any way have any opportunity for a promotion. And the secret is the holographic principle. One may fall victim to his own cleverness by outsmarting himself. Why? This is because of holographic principle. Mr. Zhang Baosheng, who is most accomplished in special skills in China, has not received very high education, but his thinking is in a holographic state, and this is the secret. The more concepts one stuffs in his head, the less holographic he will be. The more moral principles one stuffs in his head, the less holographic he will be. The more knowledge one has and the more reasons one understands, the less holographic he will be. The more rules one masters, the less holographic he will be. The more one pursues, the less holographic one will be. How can we be more holographic? Lao Tzu told us to return again to the innocence of baby. Jesus Christ asked us to become like a small child. Zhang Sanfeng told us that to obey is to be immortal. To disobey is to be an immortal. The matter is always shifting between obeying and disobeying. Buddha teaches us to stay away from all forms, let our minds abide nowhere, which is the highest Buddhist principle. The way of the greatest creator is the way of holography. What Life Genuine conveys is holographic information and holographic principles, and what Life Genuine is doing is building holographic culture and revitalizing the root culture of China and the most quintessential culture of China. This is infinitely profound and very interesting.
石墨和金刚石结构给我们的启示。
A revelation from the structure of graphite and diamond. Xiefeng. October 25th2012. Translated by Treasure and edited by Kayer. Graphite is an allotrope of carbon, a transitional crystal among covalent crystals, metal crystals, and molecular crystals. In crystals, the same layers of carbon atoms form covalent bonds by sp2, trigonal hybridization. Each carbon atom connects with 3 others, and 6 of them form a regular hexagon ring on the same plane and stretch to form laminated structures. These carbon atoms in the same plane also have p orbits, which overlap with each other to form delocalized electrons that can move freely in crystal lattices and can be motivated. That is, the graphite has metallic luster which can conduct heat and electricity. Due to the large distances between the layers, and with small bonding forces, they have soft and creamy textures, are gray-black, opaque, and solid. They have a density 2.25 G/cm3, a melting point 3652 degrees Celsius, a boiling point 4827 degrees Celsius, and a Mohs scale hardness of 1. The chemical properties are stable and corrosion-resistant, and not very reactive with acid, alkali, or other chemicals. When burned in oxygen at 687 degrees Celsius, it will produce carbon dioxide. It can be oxidized by strong oxidizing agents such as concentrated nitric acid or mineral chameleon. It can be used as an anti-scuff agent and as a lubricant. Highly pure graphite can be used as a neutron moderator in nuclear reactors and can be used in the manufacture of crucibles, electrodes, electric brushes, dry cell batteries, graphite fibers, heat exchangers, coolers, electric arc furnaces, arc lamps, pencil lead, and much more. Diamonds are allotropes of carbon atoms which are typical covalent crystals. The carbon atoms form 4 sp3 hybrid orbits which connect to each other with covalent bonds. Each carbon atom is in the center of a regular tetrahedron formed by 4 other carbon atoms associated with it, forming a crystal, and the entire crystal can be regarded as a giant molecule. These crystals belong to cubic systems and are usually in forms with 8 faces. The purest quality ones are colorless, transparent, strong, and lustrous, but impurities will make them appear blue, sky blue, light yellow, red, or black. Their density is 3.15–3.53 G/cm3. Their melting point is 3550 degrees Celsius, and their boiling point is 4827 degrees Celsius. With a Mohs scale hardness of 10, they are the hardest of all materials. They are non-conductive and appear pale blue fluorescent under ultraviolet light. They do not react with most chemical agents, and can be burned in oxygen at 777 degrees Celsius to produce carbon dioxide. Transparent carbides are known as diamonds after they have been carved and polished and are luxurious ornaments. There are few diamond minerals in nature. Diamonds can be made artificially, such as with graphite, subjected to high temperatures, high pressures, and catalyzing agents. What revelation can we obtain from the above data? Graphite and diamonds both consist of carbon atoms, which means that the material of both is the same, but the differences of their molecular structural permutations lead to completely different physical properties. The Mohs scale hardness of graphite is 1 while that of diamonds is 10. The extreme differences between the two lead to extremely different uses, and that is to say that for the same material, when its molecular permutations change, its material properties also change. This principle can be used in the management of the production, life, and human resources, and that is by the permutation and combinations of the managers. Perfect permutations and combinations will make teams like diamonds, with powerful and efficient managing ability. Conversely, if the team is like graphite, it will be weak, ineffective, and have poor managing efficiency. Graphite has free, radical electrons, while diamonds do not. This shows us the analogy that if one group consists of people with different faiths and viewpoints who act without coordination by their own free will, then it will lack cohesion, capacity, and have low efficiency and internal friction. Conversely, if the group is like a unified diamond, it will be invincible, capable of destroying any stronghold, and energy efficient. The same materials form different material properties because of their different permutations and combinations. So it is with life. If the life's non-material structure is different, then it can be transformed from one form of life into another, and a human may be transformed into a celestial being or a Buddha. We can regard humans as graphite, while celestial beings and Buddhas as diamonds. If the consciousness of a human is out of order, they will likely devolve towards lower life. If the consciousness of a human is in order, they will likely evolve toward a higher life. I have obtained the secrets of transforming humans into celestial beings and Buddhas, and I am aware of how to do this with self-cultivation and self-refinery. As long as one follows my guidance strictly, they will become a celestial being or a Buddha and reach the high-level space of life. This is assured.
若无报应则无天理。
If there is no retribution, there will be no natural law. Xie Feng. January 30th, 2019. Translated by Qin Yu and edited by Kayer. What is natural law? Natural law is the set of operational laws and principles of the universe and is the reward and punishment mechanism of Tao for all lives. What is retribution? Retribution is the set of rewards and punishments given by natural law according to each life's thoughts, words, and deeds. Is there natural law? This depends on whether there is retribution. If there is no retribution, then natural law does not exist, but if there is retribution, then there definitely is natural law. To know whether there is retribution, we have to analyze, sort out, summarize, verify, and judge from the ups and downs of human society, the rise and fall of each nation, and the joys and sorrows of each individual. We can also analyze and summarize the history and actual facts of each family and draw our own conclusions. If you find that there is indeed retribution, then you must follow natural law and not violate it, but if you find there is no retribution, then you can do whatever you want. Natural law is shapeless, formless, shadowless, traceless, invisible, intangible, and inaudible. To know whether it exists, we can only perceive, sense, and feel the changes in nature, in human society, and in everyone's status quo. To know natural law by way of retribution is called verification. We can also deduce whether it exists through logical reasoning. For example, if you killed a snake and had no son but then found that most people who killed snakes had no sons either, you could conclude that those who kill snakes generally have no sons. A connection between killing snakes and not having sons could be reached. If you kill a snake, then you will either have no sons or they would be accidents. If this were a common phenomenon, then it would prove that killing snakes is retributive, but if it were not a common phenomenon, then it would prove that there is no retribution for killing snakes and that that retribution does not exist. Another example would be between married couples. As long as the wife's aura exceeds that of her husband's, they will give birth to a daughter, but if the husband's aura surpasses that of his wife's, then they will give birth to a son. The formation of this aura correlates to the degree of love and respect that each person has toward their partner. If the wife's degree of love and respect is low, then her aura will be strong and daughters will be born, but if her degree of love and respect is high, her aura will be low and sons will be born. In the same way, if the husband's respect for his wife is low, his aura is strong, and then they will bear sons, but if his respect is high and his aura is weak, then they will bear daughters. Whether this principle is true or not needs to be verified from a large number of cases. If facts prove that this principle is true, then it proves that retribution exists, otherwise, retribution does not exist. Due to their lack of experience, young people do not understand retribution, so it requires older people to tell them about it and that if it exists, then people must be careful not to talk, act, eat, go, or think indiscriminately, otherwise there will be retribution. Once it is proven that natural law exists, then we should follow it because if we do so, we will get its corresponding retribution, but if we do not follow it, then we get the corresponding retribution for not following it. For example, I see a phenomenon in cyberspace that no matter who you are or what you post, you will always be scolded. If you are sincere and have good intentions, then you will be scolded. If you publicize Jesus or Buddha, then you will be scolded. If you promote the goodness of communism, then you will be scolded. If you respect your ancestors, then you will be scolded. If you speak from your heart honestly, then you will be scolded. If you spread truth, goodness, beauty, love, faith, and sincerity, then you will be scolded. No matter what you say, there will always be someone out there who is ready to scold you. Even gods, Buddha, celestials, and saints will be scolded when they appear to preach. This cursing is so harsh that it brings bitter winds and miserable rains and makes dust and stones fly. It is so harsh that even good people bow their heads. Thinkers dare not write articles, and those who want to do good deeds dare not do them. In addition, some people demolish other people's houses with plausibility, drive others out of their homes, add drugs to food, inject fake vaccines into children, cheat people out of money, dump garbage into rivers, and so forth. They are very aggressive. But you do not need to worry because if the existence of natural law is proven, then retribution will surely come. Natural law cannot be controlled by anyone. No matter who they are subject to its rewards and punishments. Otherwise, millions of the Ming Dynasty imperial family would not have been killed. All 10 clans of Feng Sheru's family would not have been killed because of implication. Emperor Chongjin would not have hanged himself. Ceausescu would not have been shot, and Saddam Hussein would not have been hanged. Some retributions appear immediately, some take years, decades, or even longer to manifest themselves. Therefore, when we study and explore whether retribution exists, we should not just analyze, sort out, summarize, and judge by only one event at one time by one person. We need to explore across time and space. If the retribution mechanism is real, then it can be foreseen that the Chinese nation will face a catastrophe, but if there is no catastrophe, then natural law does not exist and people can do whatever they want.
从2张图片思考心灵的温度。
Thinking about the temperature of the soul from 2 pictures. Xiefeng. May 22, 2020. Translated by Qin Yu and edited by Musa. Please look at the following 2 pictures first. They are 2 pictures of the same place. This is the place where I live and work. From the picture we can see that one is a winter scene and the other is an early summer scene. From this we can see clearly that because of the cold weather and low temperature in winter, everything is bleak and the earth is silent. But when the climate is warm, everything will be thriving. The earth will present a scene of vitality. The enlightenment of this phenomenon is that when the temperature of one's spiritual sky is appropriate, one's soul will be full of vitality and creativity, but when the temperature of one's spiritual sky is very low, one's soul will be dead and lack of vitality or creativity. So, what is the temperature of the soul? The spiritual state that measures the strength of a person's mental state, thinking ability, and creative ability is called the temperature of the soul. People with high temperature of soul are flexible, full of enthusiasm, passion, and vitality, and full of creativity just like the summer of nature, while people with low temperature of soul are sluggish, rigid in thinking and lack of creative ability, just like the winter of nature. The temperature of the soul is composed of and determined by affection, love, and sex. If a person has rich affection, is full of love, and his sex is not suppressed, the temperature of his soul is high. If a person is effectively discouraged, desperate, dejected, and self-abandoned, lack of gratitude, full of resentment to the surroundings, and his nature is suppressed and cannot be released, then the temperature of his soul is low. From the above 2 pictures, we need to warn ourselves that if the temperature of our souls is too low, our lives will fall into poverty and hopelessness. Our lives will be icy without energy and vitality. Therefore, we need to raise the temperature of our souls consciously and let our lives to be colorful and full of energy and infinite hope, just like the changing and colorful sky and earth in the summer. In addition to the temperature of our own inner soul, we also need the temperature of the outside soul. This requires us to consciously participate and devote ourselves to those people who are full of enthusiasm and passion, full of love, full of happiness, joy, freedom, and blessedness, where it can let our lives bloom brilliant shines.
名牌给我的启示。
Enlightenment from famous brands. Xiefeng. May 27, 2020. Translated by Qin Yu and edited by Kayer. At the end of last fall, I bought a Zhang Shaoquan kitchen knife from a Chinese store in Vancouver. I cherished my new knife but failed to use it for a long time until I lost my old kitchen knife last month and finally began using it. It was easier and handier to use, and the good experience that it provided was like a cow eating lotus or removing hair from yak butter. A quality product is easy to use and works really well. The old kitchen knife was eventually found, but I never used it again until yesterday when I placed the Zhang Shaoquan in the sink after I had cut some meat and picked up the old kitchen knife unconsciously when I needed to cut some vegetables. The moment I held it in my hand, I found it to be quite unpleasant, and it was at that moment that I realized the value of the famous brand. 10 years ago, Xintao Celestial gave me a Philips razor which is still good after I had used it for 10 years. Then, I accidentally lost a small holder while cleaning my hair half a year ago, so I had to buy a new razor at 100 Mile House. I bought one of the best ones in that store, but it did not work well and failed after only a month. I eventually found the small holder for my Philips, but although I wanted to use the new one, it did not work well, so I returned to using the Philips. The advantage of the Philips is that after charging it for slightly more than 10 minutes, it can be used for about 20 days. After 10 years, the battery is still intact. In addition, it feels comfortable in my hand, shaves cleanly, never pinches me or pulls any hairs out painfully, is fairly silent, and the original blade is still sharp. From these two examples, I have concluded that whether it is appliances, clothes, or other utensils, it is best to use quality brands if one can afford them. They might be more expensive, but in terms of long-term benefits, they are more cost-effective. Thus, I realized that people can also be divided into various grades. If you can get acquainted with, interact with, and cherish quality brand characters in your life, then your blessings will be great. Brand characters are like Zhang Shaoquan kitchen knives and Philips razors. They always make people feel comfortable and bring them wisdom, joy, safety, and tranquility, but never disturb them or make them feel uncomfortable. The benefits of getting along with brand characters are many. The greatest wealth in life is being able to meet and cherish one or several of them. I can be considered a blessed person because when I counted the treasures in my spiritual warehouse, I found several brand characters worth mentioning. 2 male secular friends are Shui Binyi and Lu Jinkai. 2 male Chanyuan celestials are Tongtian Celestial and Chenxi Celestial. And 3 female brand celestials are Huiying Celestial, Jingying Celestial, and Xiangrui Celestial. Their common features are that they all have rich personalities and first-class quality. They are picturesque like mountains and rivers or poems and paintings, high in taste and state, treat me sincerely and without deception, have never made me feel uncomfortable in the slightest degree, and have helped me a lot. We should cherish brand objects while using them and treat them with awe because they are expensive, and do the same with brand people. When facing the brand people whom we are lucky enough to have in our lives, we can only venerate and admire them in our hearts without the tiniest secular affection or lust. It is best to enjoy them as quietly as you would appreciate peerless landscape paintings. Never take them down and hang them up repeatedly. When several government websites described Life Chanyuan as a cult several years ago, I, as its godfather, immediately broke off my relations with Shui Binyi and Lu Jinkai because I did not want to negatively impact the futures of my best friends. Sacrificing oneself and protecting brand friends is the best way to cherish and respect them. Brand objects have exquisite structures, high quality, and long service lives, making them easy to use. Brand characters have rich personalities and are transcendent, lofty, exquisite, sincere, selfless, and desireless beyond words. They are inexhaustible spiritual sources from which one can benefit for a lifetime, so they should only be admired without the slightest profane thoughts. Of course, there are still many brand characters who are worth cherishing in my life, most of whom are Chanyuan Celestials. I hope that my existence will be valuable and useful to my dear friends, and I pray that one day my relationships with Chanyuan Celestials will no longer be as ones between a tour guide and tourists, but rather those of close friends. It is not easy to meet brand characters. Not only does it require a gift from the greatest creator, but also the matching of one's own quality. It is even more difficult to become one. It takes a lifetime of self-cultivation and self-refinement to hope to accomplish that. A person who never meets a brand character throughout their life would not know that there are mountains beyond mountains, how high the sky is, or how lush the land can be. They would always use old kitchen knives without knowing that Zhang Zioquans exist, but always think that all kitchen knives are the same. This is both pitiful and pathetic. Just like a woman who has never experienced an extreme orgasm never knows what it is really like to be a woman. I hope that I can become like a Zhang Shaoquan kitchen knife or Philips razor one day.
日常生活中能获得天启。
Revelations from Daily Life. Xiefeng. December 1st, 2020. Translated by Qin Yu and edited by Kayer. Everything and all phenomena are the words of the greatest creator, and changing phenomena are the greatest creator speaking them. This is Zen, the book without words. Reading the book without words is talking to the greatest creator, and you can listen to the greatest creator's words in daily life without pursuing a lofty posture. I placed a bag of flour inside my refrigerator, but not in the freezer section. When I reopened it a year later, I found that it had formed into lumps, which made it inedible. Revelation: flour should be placed in a dry and ventilated place because it will rot and deteriorate in a damp place. People should change their homes frequently, and they should always ventilate their thoughts. Otherwise, over time, they will become stubborn. I kept some eggplants in my refrigerator, the temperature in which was kept between 0 degrees C and 4 degrees Celsius. Within a few days, they had turned black, were frozen, and tasted stale. Later, I left other ones at room temperature, and within a few days, they too had rotted. Revelation: some vegetables cannot be kept too cold or too hot. Some people cannot be loved or hated. If you do not take a bath or change your clothes for a month, lice will appear. Revelation: as long as the conditions are right, species will find them. Viruses appear in the same way, so if humans do not adopt new ideas and new ways of living often, viruses will arrive. The coronavirus is telling people that they must think and live differently. Revelation: people who do not learn to perceive and accept new ideas and new lives often will invite parasitic thoughts to grow in their minds. When boiling mung beans, you will always encounter iron beans. Their shapes and colors are exactly the same as those of mung beans, but no matter how you cook them, they do not soften. In fact, the more you cook them, the harder they become. Revelation: within groups of people, there will always be some special ones such as saints and rogue thieves who are born thusly and will not change. It is very cold here in the winter, so our window glasses are double layered and there are empty, insulating layers between them. In this way, the cold is blocked out. Revelation: worries are cold. With 2 layers of selflessness, we can keep our worries out. I bought a water bamboo shoot 2 years ago and placed it in a glass vase and changed the water from time to time, but other than that, I never gave it any nutrient fertilizer. I would sometimes forget to change the water, and sometimes there was only a little bit of water left in the vase, but the bamboo has still been growing well. Revelation: in crowds, some people are like water bamboos. You do not need to establish special relationships with them, and you do not need to give them special care, but they will be happy as long as you smile at them or say hello to them occasionally. They need very little encouragement in order to maintain intimate relationships with you. They are the most content and sincere water bamboo-like people among us. My neighbor moved out of his old house and wanted to store a bunch of his stuff in my place for a while and stay with me for a few days. I said sure, I would love to have him. I told him that he could live with me until he found his new home, that he could stay with me for the whole winter, and that I wanted nothing in return. I even told him that he could treat my home as his own. Was I being extraordinarily generous? In fact, it was not that I was being generous, but because he had been helping me for the past several years. Every winter, this neighbor had driven his snowplow to shovel snow for me, and he never charged me anything. So my door was open to him. Revelation: if you want others to open their doors to you, and if you want to be welcomed warmly, then you need to accumulate merits in advance. If you have merits, then the door will open to you, but if there are none, then the door will be closed. The same is true for heaven. If you have merits there, then you will be welcome, but if you do not, then you will not be. Last year, I bought 2 red leaf trees from a nursery in Vancouver and grew them in flower pots. They grew very well in the summer. One day, one of them blew over in the wind, but I had not noticed it until a few hours later. So I picked it up and replanted the baby tree, but sadly it died soon after. A few days ago, I accidentally overturned some crab cactus pots on a table and poured out the soil, so I hurriedly replanted it. As a result, its growth was unaffected, and it even came into full bloom a few days later. Revelation: people are like plants. Sometimes, once you offend some, it is difficult to restore a good relationship with them, while if you offend others, it will not affect your good relationship with them at all.
天启越优秀者越美满。
Revelation, the more excellent, the happier. Xiafeng. December 4th, 2020. Translated by Qin Yu and edited by Kayer. This year, one of my friends sent me 12 large peaches from Vancouver. The color of them were gorgeous, they tasted tender, crisp, and sweet, they were big and fragrant, and except for some that I had eaten as a child, I had not enjoyed such big and fragrant ones in many decades. Later, I bought several kinds of peaches from a local supermarket, but in terms of size, color, and sweetness, they could not compare with those big peaches from my friend. To satisfy my guests, I always serve a plate of fruit for breakfast. Grapes are a standing item, so I serve them every day of the year. In addition to ones grown locally in Canada, there are also grapes imported from the United States and Mexico. Since I buy and eat grapes often, I discovered their secret. The bigger the grape, the sweeter and more fragrant, the more delicious, fewer seeds, and less residue they have, and of course, the more expensive they will be. From the above revelations of peaches and grapes, I have found that for all things, including lives, the more excellent that they are in some ways, the better they will be in many ways. This revelation even applies to people. The more excellent that people are, the easier it becomes to deal with them, the less trouble they bring to others, the more reasonable they are, the more flexible and accommodating they are in dealing with affairs, the more they give and dedicate, the less they ask for, the more humble, positive, and optimistic they are, and the better the quality of their lives are. The more excellent that people are, the better one feels about getting along with them. On the other hand, the better that people can get along with them, the more excellent they are. A further enlightenment is that only the excellent can create beautiful environments and lives. Perfection creates perfection, but flaws create defects. From this revelation, we can understand that if a region or country is poor and backward, then too few outstanding people must reside within it. But if it is prosperous and its people live and work in peace, then many outstanding people must live within it. By the way, if someone always brings hope, beauty, happiness, and joy to people and excites and makes them ecstatic, then this person must be excellent and is a big fairy peach or a big, sweet, fragrant, and colorful grape. If, on the contrary, a person always brings worries, anxiety, troubles, confusion, pessimism, and unpleasantness, then they are, you guessed it,
老虎的背上不会长翅膀。
Tigers will not grow wings on their backs. Xiafeng. March 6, 2021. Translated by Qin Yu and edited by Kayer. Suppose that tigers had wings on their backs and they could give birth to more than 10 cubs at a time like pigs and dogs. What would result? I am afraid that many other animals would have little chance to survive, and it would be questionable whether even humans could survive or not. This revelation tells us that life cannot be perfect and that people's wishes cannot be fully satisfied. If you want to be rich, powerful, famous, have a happy family, and go to heaven, there is no such possibility. You can either be a bird with wings or a fierce tiger, but no desire to be both a bird and a tiger can be satisfied. When we study the scientists who have won Nobel Prizes around the world, we find that they had been trying assiduously to explore the mysteries of the material universe in obscurity. One day, one of them succeeded in discovering one of the mysteries that was sought, but before that success was their perseverance of long and hard work and a devotion to it. Just imagine, if a person wanted to be an entrepreneur, a government official, and a star, could they also become a Nobel Prize winner? Of course not. If you covet too much, then in the end you will accomplish nothing. Too much greed will not only cause successive worries, but also lead to schizophrenia and, of course, failure. If a man wants to get a beautiful, sexy, charming, gentle, considerate, artful, loyal woman who can entertain guests and cook well, with a successful career, and who can make a lot of money and always accompany her husband to serve him tea and coffee, could he find her? No way. She does not exist. That would be like looking for a tiger with wings on its back. For those who are determined to trek to the peak of life and finally reach heaven, when you decide to start, you must say goodbye to your desires for money, power, fame, profit, status, and carnal bliss. You must no longer want to own anything. You must reach the state of zero, possess nothing, and be selfless. In your process of trekking and climbing, you cannot look back, nor look around to compare, but you must remain focused on your way forward. In this process, what you should overcome are not the difficulties and obstacles on your way forward, but rather your inner hesitation, anxiety, pain, fear, lack of confidence, your inner purgatory, and your mental and spiritual torture. Do not expect people around you to understand and support you. That would be impossible. Consider yourself fortunate if they do not try to pull you back. You will taste despair to the point of considering suicide, and at the same time, you will not have the time or energy to explain anything, let alone to get angry, complain, or consider revenge. These kinds of mental and spiritual suffering will be the prices that you will have to pay to go to heaven. Never have regrets in life. They will ruin your good memories of the past and your spiritual power to go toward the beautiful time and space. Over the past years, no matter how much blood, sweat, tears, and hardships we have paid, and no matter how much grievance and helplessness we have experienced, it has become history, and history is a burden. With this heavy burden, it is impossible to move forward lightly and leisurely, to walk a long way, and to reach the most ideal destination. For the past, no regrets; to the future, firm faith. This way, there will be hope to climb to the peak of life and life.
越纯越稳定。
The purer, the more stable. Xiafeng. January 26, 2019. Translated by Qin Yu and edited by Musa. Let's first look at a natural phenomenon. According to a report by the British Daily Mail on January 22, 2019, in the attic of a resident named Roderick Cooper in Alaska, there are 2 bottles of water in the freezing weather of -22 degrees Celsius, which are still in liquid state, video shows. It is scientifically explained that this is the phenomenon of supercooling, which means that when a liquid is very pure without impurities, the freezing speed will become very slow, and the liquid will continue to remain in the liquid state without ice crystals and will not freeze into solid even it is 22 degrees Celsius below zero or colder. Let's look at another phenomenon. What do we see when babies and children are with wolf, insect, tiger, leopard, and other wild and domestic animals? What we see is that wild animals do not harm babies and children. No matter how wild dogs are, when they are with babies and children, they become docile, even affectionate when they are with babies and children. They not only do not harm babies and children, but also take care of them. Dogs are like this, horses, cattle, sheep are like this, even wild wolves are like this. According to the legend of the city of Rome, when the 15th king of Numitor was reigning, his brother Amulius usurped the throne. For fear of revenge from his brother's descendants, Amulius killed his nephew and forced his niece Silvia to be a priestess who was not allowed to marry. In this way, his brother would have no offspring, and Amulius thought that there would be no crisis in his regime. But his niece Silvia secretly fell in love with the god of war Mars and quietly gave birth to twins. When Amulius learned the news, he ordered the execution of his niece and asked the slave to throw the twins into the Tiber. The river washed the twins to the shore, and their cries led to a female wolf who was drinking water by the river. Instead of harming the twins, she lovingly licked them dry and brought them back to her cave and feed them with her own milk. In 1920, in a small town called Midnapal in the northeast of Kolkata, India, people found 2 human-like monsters, walking on all fours trailing behind 3 big wolves. The 2 human-like monsters turned out to be 2 naked girls. It was later confirmed that the 2 girls were raised by wolves since childhood. By the 1950s, it has been discovered scientifically that 30 children were raised by beasts, 5 by bears, 1 by leopards, 14 by wolves, as well as by monkeys and sheep. Let's look at another phenomenon. There are many kinds of gemstones in nature. No matter what kind of gemstones, their value and price are related to their purity. The higher the purity, the higher the value and the price. This also applies to people. The purer and more beautiful they are, the more likable they are. The more complex they are, the more they will be hated by others. To sum up, we can come to the conclusion that the purer a thing is, the less susceptible it is to external factors just like the rare gas helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, and radon in the periodic table chemical elements. Similarly, the purer a thing is, the higher its stability is. It can also be concluded that the higher the purity of things, the easier for it to get the love of the environment, that is, the care and cherishment of the environment. Hence, we can understand why Jesus Christ said that if we want to enter the kingdom of the greatest creator, we must become a child, and we can also understand why Lao Tzu taught us that we must return to the state of infancy if we want to unite with the Tao. Because only by returning to the state of infancy, becoming a child, can you be qualified to enter the kingdom of heaven. Let's extend this principle. If you want to enter heaven, the key is to become pure. Only pure things can show their nature. Nature is Buddha, nature is celestial. Showing nature is equivalent to becoming celestial and Buddha. Celestial and Buddha will definitely enter heaven. Babies and children are very pure, and what they expose are completely nature. So even a ferocious wolf will not hurt them but will love them. Therefore, whether one can enter heaven or not has nothing to do with learning, knowledge, and wisdom, how many classic books you have learned. It has nothing to do with religion, how many good deeds you have done, how much truth you have understood and spread. It has nothing to do with kowtowing, burning incense, or making pilgrimage. The key is whether a life is pure. In this way, the content of self-cultivation and self-refinement is very simple. What we need to do is to let ourselves become pure, return to the state of infancy. So, we know that the more complicated people are, the farther away they are from heaven. The purer, the more stable. Is it a universal law? Let's analyze it. Most people will have friends. At the beginning, the friendship is very pure, so they can maintain a friendly relationship. But gradually, the friendly relationship cannot be maintained. Why? The reason is that the friendship is becoming more and more impure. If interests are added to friendship, the friendship will become complicated and impure, so it can no longer be maintained. Many people set up companies and business. At the beginning, the company developed smoothly, but as time passed, the company began to decline and close. What is the reason? The reason is that the company has become impure. Some companies began to marry politics, some companies began to get involved in the real estate business, some companies began to get involved in the stock market, some industrial companies became interested in the cultural field, and some companies that only provided food began to engage in business of restaurants, breeding, and planting. Although they are consistent with the content of providing food, their scope of business is different after all, so they will eventually decline. Let's look at the social fields. Romania, Yugoslavia, the Soviet Union, Venezuela, Vietnam, and China all are socialism. The result is they all have almost collapsed. China's socialism is also on the verge of collapse. The reason is that none of them is pure. Socialism is socialism. If you mix it with the market, family, and party interest and corruption, it will surely collapse. Pro-socialism is definitely superior to capitalism, but if you make the socialism rather impure, how can it be better than capitalism? Collapse is inevitable, because it violates the rule of the purer, the more stable. Flies always find the cracked eggs. Why? Because if there is no crack on the egg, it can keep relatively pure, so flies won't bite it. Once there is crack on the egg cannot keep pure, flies will certainly come to bite. In the process of founding Lifechanuan, I found out that people with more complex thoughts are more likely to be disturbed by external factors and gradually leave, while those with simpler thoughts are more likely to remain. This fact also proves the rule that the purer, the more stable. Thus, we can get another conclusion for a person: the more knowledgeable, the more complex the thinking, the greater the ability, the more mindful and smarter, the more experienced, the more deeply involved in society, the more flexible, the more he is unreliable because he or she violates the rule of the purer, the more stable. He might vow to you today, and part ways with you tomorrow. Thus, we can get one more conclusion that the more complex one is, the most silly and stupid the person is in the world.
越纯越稳定。
The purer, the more stable. Xiefeng. January 26, 2019. Translated by Qin Yu and edited by Musa. Let's first look at a natural phenomenon. According to a report by the British Daily Mail on January 22, 2019, in the attic of a resident named Roderick Cooper in Alaska, there are 2 bottles of water in the freezing weather of minus 22 degrees Celsius, which are still in liquid state, video shows. It is scientifically explained that this is the phenomenon of supercooling, which means that when a liquid is very pure without impurities, the freezing speed will become very slow, and the liquid will continue to remain in the liquid state without ice crystals, and will not freeze into solid even if it is 22 degrees Celsius below zero or colder. Let's look at another phenomenon. What do we see when babies and children are with wolf, insect, tiger, leopard, and other wild and domestic animals? What we see is that wild animals do not harm babies and children. No matter how wild dogs are, when they are with babies and children, they become docile, even affectionate when they are with babies and children. They not only do not harm babies and children, but also take care of them. Dogs are like this, horses, cattle, sheep are like this, even wild wolves are like this. According to the legend of the city of Rome, when the 15th king of Numitor was reigning, his brother Amulius usurped the throne. For fear of revenge from his brother's descendants, Amulius killed his nephew and forced his niece Silvia to be a priestess who was not allowed to marry. In this way, his brother would have no offspring, and Amulius thought that there would be no crisis in his regime. But his niece Silvia secretly fell in love with the god of war Mars and quietly gave birth to twins. When Amulius learned the news, he ordered the execution of his niece and asked the slave to throw the twins into the Tiber. The river washed the twins to the shore, and their cries led to a female wolf who was drinking water by the river. Instead of harming the twins, she lovingly licked them dry and brought them back to her cave and feed them with her own milk. In 1920, in a small town called Midnapal in the northeast of Kolkata, India, people found 2 human-like monsters, walking on all fours trailing behind 3 big wolves. The 2 human-like monsters turned out to be 2 naked girls. It was later confirmed that the 2 girls were raised by wolves since childhood. By the 1950s, it has been discovered scientifically that 30 children were raised by beasts, 5 by bears, 1 by leopards, 14 by wolves, as well as by monkeys and sheep. Let's look at another phenomenon. There are many kinds of gemstones in nature. No matter what kind of gemstones, their value and price are related to their purity. The higher the purity, the higher the value and the price. This also applies to people. The purer and more beautiful they are, the more likable they are. The more complex they are, the more they will be hated by others. To sum up, we can come to the conclusion that the purer a thing is, the less susceptible it is to external factors, just like the rare gas helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, and radon in the periodic table chemical elements. Similarly, the purer a thing is, the higher its stability is. It can also be concluded that the higher the purity of things, the easier for it to get the love of the environment, that is, the care and cherishment of the environment. Hence, we can understand why Jesus Christ said that if we want to enter the kingdom of the greatest Creator, we must become a child, and we can also understand why Lao Tzu taught us that we must return to the state of infancy if we want to unite with the Tao. Because only by returning to the state of infancy, becoming a child, can you be qualified to enter the kingdom of heaven. Let's extend this principle. If you want to enter heaven, the key is to become pure. Only pure things can show their nature. Nature is Buddha, nature is celestial. Showing nature is equivalent to becoming celestial and Buddha. Celestial and Buddha will definitely enter heaven. Babies and children are very pure, and what they expose are completely nature. So even a ferocious wolf will not hurt them but will love them. Therefore, whether one can enter heaven or not has nothing to do with learning, knowledge, and wisdom, how many classic books you have learned. It has nothing to do with religion, how many good deeds you have done, how much truth you have understood and spread. It has nothing to do with kowtowing, burning incense, or making pilgrimage. The key is whether a life is pure. In this way, the content of self-cultivation and self-refinement is very simple. What we need to do is to let ourselves become pure, return to the state of infancy. So, we know that the more complicated people are, the farther away they are from heaven. The purer, the more stable. Is it a universal law? Let's analyze it. Most people will have friends. At the beginning, the friendship is very pure, so they can maintain a friendly relationship. But gradually, the friendly relationship cannot be maintained. Why? The reason is that the friendship is becoming more and more impure. If interests are added to friendship, the friendship will become complicated and impure, so it can no longer be maintained. Many people set up companies and business. At the beginning, the company developed smoothly, but as time passed, the company began to decline and close. What is the reason? The reason is that the company has become impure. Some companies began to marry politics, some companies began to get involved in the real estate business, some companies began to get involved in the stock market, some industrial companies became interested in the cultural field, and some companies that only provided food began to engage in business of restaurants, breeding, and planting. Although they are consistent with the content of providing food, their scope of business is different after all, so they will eventually decline. Let's look at the social fields. Romania, Yugoslavia, the Soviet Union, Venezuela, Vietnam, and China all are socialism. The result is they all have almost collapsed. China's socialism is also on the verge of collapse. The reason is that none of them is pure. Socialism is socialism. If you mix it with the market, family, and party interest and corruption, it will surely collapse. Pro-socialism is definitely superior to capitalism, but if you make the socialism rather impure, how can it be better than capitalism? Collapse is inevitable, because it violates the rule of the purer, the more stable. Flies always find the cracked eggs. Why? Because if there is no crack on the egg, it can keep relatively pure, so flies won't bite it. Once there is crack on the egg cannot keep pure. Flies will certainly come to bite. In the process of founding Life Genuine, I found out that people with more complex thoughts are more likely to be disturbed by external factors and gradually leave, while those with simpler thoughts are more likely to remain. This fact also proves the rule that the purer, the more stable. Thus, we can get another conclusion for a person: the more knowledgeable, the more complex the thinking, the greater the ability, the more mindful and smarter, the more experienced, the more deeply involved in society, the more flexible, the more he is unreliable, because he or she violates the rule of the purer, the more stable. He might vow to you today and part ways with you tomorrow. Thus, we can get one more conclusion, that the more complex one is, the most silly and stupid the person is in the world.
万物皆有声，天启篇之5。
Everything has a sound. Xiefeng. Translation edited by Jiejing. As long as there is movement, vibrations will occur. With vibrations, waves are produced. And with waves, sound is generated. All moving machines make sounds. All living animals produce sounds. All growing plants have sounds. Plants grow with sound. White clouds drifting across the blue sky have sound. Butterflies gracefully dancing among flowers have sound. Mosquitoes buzzing as they suck blood have sound. And the movement of the intestines has sound. Flowing water has sound, and even seemingly still mountains, rocks, and the earth itself have sound. This is because they are not only moving with the Earth's rotation and its revolution around the sun, but also because the molecules within them are in motion. Any frequency of oscillation produces sound. The crashing waves of the sea have sound, animals running and walking on the earth have sound, birds flying in the sky have sound, and signals emitted by television stations, radio stations, communication towers, including the signals from our mobile phones, have sound. All light has sound, not only the radiant waves of the sun, but also the faint glow emitted by a lit candle has sound. The flowing underground springs have sound, blood flowing through our veins has sound, and the upward flow of nutrients within the branches of ancient trees that have lived for 100 years also has sound. The brain has brainwaves, the heart has an electrocardiogram, and our mental activities, thinking, consciousness have sound. The universe has sound, empty space has sound, positive objects have sound, and negative objects have sound. The greatest creator who created everything in the universe has sound.
万物皆有声，天启篇之5。
Everything has a sound. Xiefeng. Translation edited by Jiejing. As long as there is movement, vibrations will occur. With vibrations, waves are produced. And with waves, sound is generated. All moving machines make sounds. All living animals produce sounds. All growing plants have sounds. Plants grow with sound. White clouds drifting across the blue sky have sound. Butterflies gracefully dancing among flowers have sound. Mosquitoes buzzing as they suck blood have sound. And the movement of the intestines has sound. Flowing water has sound, and even seemingly still mountains, rocks, and the earth itself have sound. This is because they are not only moving with the Earth's rotation and its revolution around the sun, but also because the molecules within them are in motion. Any frequency of oscillation produces sound. The crashing waves of the sea have sound, animals running and walking on the earth have sound, birds flying in the sky have sound, and signals emitted by television stations, radio stations, communication towers, including the signals from our mobile phones, have sound. All light has sound, not only the radiant waves of the sun, but also the faint glow emitted by a lit candle has sound. The flowing underground springs have sound, blood flowing through our veins has sound, and the upward flow of nutrients within the branches of ancient trees that have lived for 100 years also has sound. The brain has brainwaves, the heart has an electrocardiogram, and our mental activities, thinking, consciousness have sound. The universe has sound, empty space has sound, positive objects have sound, and negative objects have sound. The greatest creator who created everything in the universe has sound.
联想思维，天启篇之75。
Associative thinking. Xiefeng. Translation edited by Jiejing. Being able to grasp a particular phenomenon in the natural world, and then through that phenomenon draw analogies, make inferences, and establish connections with other related factors is called associative thinking. The most typical example of associative thinking is Newton, apple, universal gravitation. Newton, observing the common natural phenomenon of an apple falling to the ground, associated it with gravity. From gravity, he made connections to factors such as mass, velocity, and spatial distance, and subsequently derived the 3 laws of motion. This is an example of associative thinking. The phenomenon of swirling water in a bathtub drain can be associated with the direction of Earth's magnetic field lines. The spiraling ascent of a bean vine can be associated with the direction of celestial bodies' movement. The natural phenomenon of wood floating and iron sinking on the water surface can be associated with buoyancy and the shipbuilding industry. The discontinuity observed in certain events can be associated with quantum mechanics. The concepts of motion, mass, and gravity can be associated with the curvature of spacetime. The role of consciousness can be associated with the holographic nature of the universe, and so on. All of these examples fall under the category of associative thinking. A qualified detective can deduce the character traits, motives, and whereabouts of the parties involved from the smallest clues. A qualified forensic expert can infer the physical characteristics, facial expressions, and even the appearance and attire of the perpetrator from the victim's injuries and facial expressions. A qualified traditional Chinese medicine practitioner can identify internal organ disorders based on a patient's complexion. A qualified fortune teller, based on a person's facial features, can make predictions about their past actions, future fortunes, and misfortunes. A qualified feng shui master can assess the quality of a person's living environment based on their handwriting and habitual movements. A qualified politician can anticipate a dynasty's transition and the arrival of a new era based on common psychological and behavioral patterns among people. A qualified economist can predict stock market fluctuations, the future economic development of a company or a nation based on specific events. A qualified sociologist can associate the prevalence of prostitution, drug use, and organized crime with the loss of a nation's belief systems and moral values. Even a fashion designer can envision future clothing trends based on popular colors and the pace of people's footsteps on the streets. Associative thinking possesses qualities of originality, inventiveness, novelty, and uniqueness. It is a divergent thinking process. Many people may appear to have associative thinking, but in reality, they are merely applying the associative knowledge of others or drawing from long-standing experiential summaries. For example, many farmers can relate the changing seasons to spring plowing, summer growth, autumn harvest, and winter storage. However, this is not the result of their own associative thinking but a reflection of their accumulated experiences in their conscious minds. Similarly, many individuals can associate joint pain with changes in weather, which is the effect of knowledge and experience rather than the result of associative thinking. Many businessmen make decisions on what goods to import or export based on regional differences, timing variations, and seasonal variations. Again, this is a result of experience, with few exceptions. When we look at the professions of engineers, technicians, experts, scholars, ordinary detectives, doctors, economists, and others, it may seem like their work relies on associative thinking. However, in reality, they are simply applying the knowledge or experience acquired from education or accumulated through their work. For instance, Newton's association of an apple falling to the ground with the concept of universal gravitation is a result of associative thinking. But if a college student claims to associate an apple falling to the ground with universal gravitation, they are merely stating the knowledge they have learned, recounting Newton's discovery, rather than expressing their own associative thinking unless they have never heard of Newton or were unaware of the concept of gravity. Strictly speaking, associative thinking refers to the type of thinking that leads to new discoveries, inventions, creations, and theories. In this sense, individuals who possess associative thinking are primarily scientists, inventors, forensic experts, traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, fortune tellers, feng shui masters, exceptional politicians, military strategists, and engineers or technicians who can develop new products to some extent. The individuals who primarily drive the slow progression of human civilization are those who possess the ability of associative thinking. Without them, the civilized society we have today would not exist. Materialistic thinking is rigid thinking, while associative thinking is divergent thinking. It breaks free from the rigidity of materialistic thinking and surpasses the imitation and copying of image thinking. It directly extends its tentacles into unknown territories, leading to new discoveries and inventions and finding new pathways. However, associative thinking still falls far short of truly grasping the profound mysteries of the universe. I can see this point from the thinking of great scientists such as Newton, Einstein, Planck, Hawking, and others. I also see it in the efforts of scientists attempting to establish a unified field theory of the universe. For the entire human race, I hope to see a significant emergence of individuals with associative thinking abilities. This is because when it comes to transporting a 6-ton cargo from point A to point B, which is 800 kilometers away, an individual with associative thinking can simply drive a heavy truck and complete the task in a day. On the other hand, if we rely on individuals with material thinking, even if each person can carry 50 kilograms and walk 100 kilometers a day, it will still require 120 people and 8 days to accomplish the task. This approach would be wasteful, laborious, and inefficient. As for individuals with image thinking, they simply cannot achieve this task. From an artistic perspective, image thinking may be greater than material thinking. However, from a practical standpoint, when one is hungry, a steamed bun can provide sustenance, whereas a picture of a bun, no matter how realistic, cannot solve practical problems. For Life Genuine members, I hope that everyone does not limit their thinking to associative thinking because associative thinking is still a lower-level form of thinking. It's like the situation where information needs to be exchanged between the two shores of the Atlantic Ocean. Materialistic thinkers would build ships and send people across, imagery-based thinkers would lay undersea cables, and associative thinkers would use radio waves. However, our approach is
静处无灾殃，闹处有祸患，天启偏之气。